All right. This is Nicholas Santillo and Dr. Gillian Kerr of Logical Outcomes, a Canadian nonprofit. Today we'll be talking about how Logical Outcomes uses OneNote to manage projects. So, Gillian.
Okay, thanks. All right, this is our very first video, so we're kind of messing around, seeing how it works. If it does work, then we'll probably do more to explain our various tools. What we're going to be talking about today is OneNote and why and how Logical Outcomes is using OneNote to manage the projects. We are mainly using Microsoft products, Microsoft Office 365, for a number of reasons which we may talk about later. But primarily it's got free licensing for nonprofits, and the set of tools is very powerful. OneNote in particular is called a note-taking tool. It's a lot more than that, and it's free. It's freely downloadable for the major platforms, including Windows and Mac and Android and iPhone. And we found that it's a really good way for distributed teams to stay on track and to work together while using free tools. And I'm going to show you how we're building a project template using OneNote to manage projects that is trying to create, as this page says, a project in a box. So we're putting everything we know about managing the usual consulting project into a OneNote template. And then for each project, we're copying this template and customizing it. And I'll walk through each section, and then Nicholas, just stop me if you want to ask specific questions, okay?
Okay. So first off, I think there is because it's being used between multiple people, that's OneNote shares these notebooks, right? So
right.
Talking about that idea that we can all be working on the same thing and syncing it between each other.
That's great. That's right. The OneNote is saved in a shared cloud drive. It's called OneDrive for Business. Microsoft also has a free version called just OneDrive. And if you put it in the OneDrive, you can share it with people, and then as you're working together, you can see in real time what people's notes are. So you can do screen sharing without the screen sharing program, just by seeing and sharing what you're typing. And so when you've set up a OneNote file, you can share it using this dialog here. Share this notebook. Put in people's email addresses, and then you can either give them view-only access or edit access. Which reminds me, it is possible to access OneNote as an online program. We don't recommend it. It's OneNote is a very complicated program, and when you look at it online, on the web, it's flat and difficult to manage. So when I'm talking about OneNote, I'm talking about it as a desktop program on whatever your device is. So we're okay. Shall I go into the template?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this template may look simple, may look complicated, but it's a result of years and years of kind of hassles around how to manage a project. I'm going to start out with there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen when you're setting up a consulting project. So Logical Outcomes is a consulting company. We work mainly for funders and nonprofits. Generally, you might have a project that is a month long or 3 months or a year long. They all involve fairly complex setup to make sure that our systems are working, that we brought on the contractors, that the contractors, they're all going to get paid appropriately, that we're tracking milestones. What we're trying to do is take all of the many tasks that go into running a project and capture them in this one OneNote template so that it's not implicit knowledge that gets passed on through memory. It's written down. And for each project, we will update it as we learn things. So here's just project initiation. There's a whole ton of stuff that the project manager does. Then there's managing the project closure. You see on the right, you have all of these pages. The writing proposals, we won't talk about that right now. But each in OneNote, you have sections. Up here you can see with the tabs. And then each section has a bunch of pages. And the pages can be sub-pages if they're, you can make them sub-pages here by dragging them back and forth. And you can also create, if I right-click here, you can have section groups which means sort of mini OneNotes. You can make it as deep as you want. So OneNote is, in fact, a database that's pretending to be a notebook. Here in client communications, we're using it right from the very first meeting to run the project. The first meeting in a project can be an internal kickoff or an external kickoff. What you try to do is negotiate the project charter at the very beginning to clarify what you and the client understand regarding the project. Generally, a project starts after a proposal, a call for proposal has gone out, you've written a proposal, they give you the contract is signed. By the time you actually start the project, a lot of things have changed already. It's usually starting later than you originally thought because the client generally doesn't get the RFP out in time. And by the time the decision's gone, they might be months behind schedule. And so the first thing you want to do at the beginning of a project is to negotiate what exactly do you need done, when do you need it done, what's important, what can you throw out because it's not important anymore, and you capture that in the project charter.
Okay. And what differentiates then, because we see all these pages on the right side, project charter proposal.
Right.
These are all separate pages. And what would distinguish one page from another? Why would we keep them separate in one page?
Okay, good. This particular section is called Client Communications. And so these pages are all the important client communications that we want to save that relate to managing the project. So the first one is the charter, but the next one, generally we would put the proposal in here so that we could remember what we had promised. We probably will cut and paste the statement of work from the contract. Contracts tend to be very long. A lot of them are a lot of the contracts are terms and conditions. And so what we'll do is cut and paste the piece that actually says what you're supposed to do and put it here so everybody can see what the official understanding was. Client approvals, we would store here. What often happens is that during the project, the client and we might change our mind. So we say, well, we were going to do 2 surveys. We've agreed, we really need to do 3 surveys or only 1. When something is agreed that affects the contract, that affects the deliverables, we want to capture it and so that there's no misunderstandings, that we have that written down. And the reason that we use OneNote is that it's all there. It's the entire project is in one place. It's really easy to find. It's very fast to, they've got a great search capability. And then later when we archive it, it's all there as opposed to little bits and pieces of emails and PDFs and so on. Did that answer your question? Yeah,
that's good. So it's this idea of everything kind of has its own place. It's much easier to find. And with the client approvals, would you potentially even be putting new pages, sub-pages under that for each specific approval? Probably. Depending on how you choose to work with it. Yeah, the nice thing about OneNote is that it feels pretty flexible. It feels pretty loose. Most people it's friendly. It invites people to mess around with it. And so I suspect that different project managers and different teams will have different styles and different levels of formality. I've started it off here, and what we're hoping is that after every project, one of the project closure tasks involves updating this template to make it work better. But right here, we know that, for example, this page is project kickoff meeting, agenda and minutes. We know that we're going to have a project kickoff meeting. That's part of our workflow. So you might as well build it in right from the beginning. The idea is to minimize the amount of time that we're spending and make project management as efficient as possible. So we've got this project kickoff meeting. I would cut and paste this whole thing in an email, send it off to them, perhaps with a copy of the project charter. And then when we actually had the meeting, during the meeting, project manager or someone on the team would be taking the notes. And then as soon as it's finished, you can export these notes and send them an email to the client, or you can give the client access to this whole OneNote and have the client, if you want to share it and if they're interested in it,
there's no reason that the client can't have access to the whole OneNote.
Right. And that reminds me actually that you can also export emails from Outlook directly into OneNote so that you can be pulling information. We don't have to copy and paste all the time. We can just directly import things in the same way that you do the other way.
It's a really good point. And OneNote is really integrated into all of the Microsoft Office products. And so I'm not going to go into my email because I can't remember which emails are being shown in my Outlook. But if you right-click an email in Outlook, you can send it directly to OneNote, and it will have its own note page.
That's powerful. So let's assume we've gone through this the kickoff section, and we're now working on the project, which is going to be the bulk of the work in OneNote. And this is where things get even more complicated in terms of, or complex, I should say, at least, in terms of how we're working with it. Because this is where the bulk of the effort's going to be. We're not going to be working in a Microsoft Word and Excel and 5 different documents. Everything is done in OneNote, right?
That exactly. So what we're trying to do is reduce the low-value work around project management. And before going on to that, the task management, I'll just use project charter as an example. So project charter, it's a good thing. Now, what we are not going to do is copy and paste this project charter into a Word document, get it all formatted, fix it up, and then send it to the client, because that's a lot of wasted effort. What we're going to do instead, using OneNote, is say, okay, we've had a meeting. We've filled in a project charter. One of the things you will notice in our default project charter is that the project scope is going to exclude copy-edited interim reports, status reports, and technical reports. In other words, if it's an interim report, if it's just something for internal use, we are not going to put the money into making sure that everything is gorgeous. We're going to be using our effort to deliver something that's high value, and if the client wants something that's really pretty, then that would increase the scope. So with the project charter, to show you how this would work, when we've got it approved in the first meeting, the project manager would right-click this, export it. We're going to use the selected pages. I'm going to export it into PDF because this is the official project charter. So I'm going to have project name, whatever it is, charter.
And you're using dashes there?
Yeah, I'm using dashes. I like dashes because when you're working Microsoft Office 365, a lot of things are done online, and dashes mean that when you have a web link, it's filled with those ASCII characters, the %20.
Okay, great.
So I'm just saving this, and then I will show you what it looks like. Do you see that? It is exported into a beautiful PDF file that is ready to email to the client. They can respond by email approving it. It's dated, it's versioned, and every time we make a change, we just update it and then export it as PDF, and then we would save it into the communications. That has saved at least a couple of hours of just faffing around with a Word document.
That's incredible.
So, okay, I'm going to go to the active tasks here.
Okay, so now we're getting into the meat of the projects, yeah?
That's right, exactly. Okay. So you've got the instructions for the project manager. That whole section, the first section is just instructions. Client communications, that's the contract and all the client communications. Draft deliverables, this is where we've probably pulled it in from the proposal, and I'm not going to cover that here. I'm going to go to active tasks. We have been struggling in the companies I've worked with and in the virtual teams I've been involved with. It's really difficult to manage tasks and projects. Generally, we're on multiple projects at the same time, and we may be working in multiple different phases of the same project, and it's hard to keep track of them. We've used various project management schemes, and for one reason or another, it's all awful. Project management's tough. We are using OneNote partly because it's so straightforward. With here, what we're doing here is capturing all the tasks in pages. So I'm going to say, give me a task, Nick.
Okay. Write an email to the client.
Write to client to ask what's going on with the project charter.
Okay, so it's much more specific in this.
Exactly. What you want in, and that is the task. And then I'm going to put it right up here, and I'm actually going to say, instead of just in progress, that's too generic, I'm going to say December 5th sprint. So I'm going to have a very short-term sprint. Well, it's only the 3rd of December right now. So this is, let's say, December 12th. So these are all the things that we're going to be doing before December 12th. We're using agile methodology with sprints because in long projects, what often happens is that you have these tasks that are supposedly in progress for months, and they float around. They demoralize everybody. Nobody knows what's going on. Instead, what we're doing with each project is saying, this is what we're going to do in the next 2 weeks, or at most the next 4 weeks, and everything else stays in the backlog. So backlog is like all the stuff that we're going to do, but we haven't prioritized yet.
Okay.
Inbox are things that we've collected. They may be rough notes. They haven't even been processed. They may not even be clear tasks yet. And so this active tasks, this template, is how we actually are managing all of the tasks of the organization. And you'll see here, I've got @Gillian here. That's because I've still got caps lock here. When I say @Gillian, it brings up all of the tasks that belong to me. And there's Almir's Corner is a video that we highly recommend. Sorry, I'm getting distracted thinking too many things.
We'll include the link. Yeah, we'll include the link.
Okay, we'll include the link. There is a beautiful way of tracking who is doing what and how to switch tasks back and forth right within OneNote using Scrum methodology, using a Kanban board, and that's probably going to be another video because that's got its own beauty. So, Nick, what would you like me to get into at this point?
So the issue with tracking changes, I know, is something that a lot of people like using Microsoft Word for, because you're able to track who's working on what's been edited or changed. Now, using OneNote means that we don't have issues with different drafts of the same document as we're working on it. But the question then comes up is, how do I know what's been changed since I looked at it last and who did it?
Yeah, that, and it might make sense next time to see what happens when I give the presentation over to you, Nicholas. But because I don't have the page set up to show how that's working, one of the things that will let you know when something has changed is that if somebody else has changed a page, it'll be bolded here, so you'll be able to see it right away. Another is that if somebody's changed, it'll be highlighted in the body. And the other thing is that when I'm finished with this and I'm ready for you to take it, I just change this, and then the next time you search for your own tasks, it'll come up, and you'll be able to see it. But I don't know, is that what you were wanting me to cover?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, there you go. All right. So we're talking, and Nicholas is writing stuff down. You can see his initial there. If I hover over it, I'll see exactly who's doing it. And we can, in real time, write things together on OneNote.
And then once we're done, say the sprint, and we're ready to test it or to approve, how would we move that down? It's just a drag and drop?
Okay, so I'm going to say it's a good idea to be very clear in these tasks. So you should be able to glance down and see exactly what the issue is right here. If, say, Nicholas has already written to the client, like I've done it, it's done, we might have kept rewriting the task to make it really clear. OneNote is a relaxed program. it doesn't have to be highly formal as long as it's clear. And so at this point, you can say, right, you've got, here are the notes from our phone conversations, and then you say, okay, that's done. I'm going to get rid of this whole thing, and I'm going to just drag it into the completed tasks. So it's cleaned it up.
Okay.
That's what you were talking about?
That's exactly. And you can also drag them down. So I could be dragging them down into the ready to test, ready to approve, or any of those
That's
things
right.
as well.
So it's write the interim report. I can say at Nicholas, and then you, it should be at, and it's at _, because it means that you can find it really quickly in OneNote. If you just said Nicholas, it'll come up with everything that Nicholas has written down. And the at _ says this is a task. It's currently assigned to Nicholas. So it's an amazingly efficient way of doing this. So maybe Nicholas writes some stuff. He passes it on to Sarah. Sarah passes it back to me. And then, so all of this, it's been, in the sprint. You can see it's been moved up to the sprint because this is actually talks about what phase it is. Then at some point, it's ready to test. So we say, okay, Sarah's going to review it. Then Sarah reviews it. She says, okay, it's ready to approve, which means, say Neil is the project owner, so Neil's going to approve it. Then Neil finishes it off, says approved, and then it either goes, maybe back to Nicholas to actually post it, or we just drag it into the completed tasks.
Now, I had a question about if I get, because I'm not a project manager maybe for something, and I get assigned a task, but I realize that there's actually a number of different things underneath that. Now, because the task is mine, how would I be then? I could create new pages, pull them to the side, like you showed at the, and also they show in Owner's Corner, and then assign them to other people so that I kind of become the manager of my own individual task, right?
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of things. One is that I've done Control-N. So if you do Control-N, it creates new pages down here at the bottom under Inbox.
Oh, great.
And then I go through and I name them with a dot at the top just because I find untitled pages ugly and it distracts me. And so we're gonna say close down the project. Now, in fact, project closure has a whole bunch of subtasks. But let's just say we're going to archive the project docs, and I'm gonna put that into the backlog, and then that's a sub page right here. So I've just now brought this into the backlog and made a sub page. Now, I can, under here, I'm going to say the whole thing belongs to Nicholas. Okay, so now Nicholas can do anything he likes with it. You can, if you move it up, OneNote, you actually have to move them separately. And so the reason for the subpage is that this little arrow, you can have a task with a lot of subtasks and then close them down. You can you can say, I'm not ready for project docs, so that stays in the backlog. But another subtask, which is, close down the access to the project by the contractors, that's more urgent. So you create that subtask and you pull it up into this sprint. So you can decompose it and pull it together again. The way that you prevent yourself from having too many subpages all over the place is using, it's called the Getting Things Done methodology. It's GTD, Getting Things Done. It's quite popular in technology, and the way you handle it, I don't want to answer that email. In GTD, okay, so the task is set up Getting Things Done method, and I'm going to say That's for me. And then there may be lots and lots of subtasks, but instead of making separate pages, I'm just going to create task 1, task 2. So at the beginning, until you're ready to start handling them, you use, for complex tasks, you use the description field to get all of the tasks down. Because the way that tasks actually get done is that generally you get a burst of energy and you do a whole bunch of things at once.
Right.
And so in getting things done, if you've got a massive task like, I don't know, market yourself or, redo your website and become famous, you don't have that as a task. It's too big. What you would do is you would come up with the first task that you need to do. You would make it about 20 minutes long, but no more than an hour, because more than an hour, people look at it and they feel exhausted already. And so you write down a task that is clear. So this is too big, right? I would say the big task.
And we're getting off into another issue with getting things done. This is almost a separate entire methodology here. But this is the underpinning. This is the underpinning of the rationale behind how we use OneNote is the getting things done method, which we could link to or let people know about.
Exactly. So that'll be another thing
of how we're using this program.
It is, and
then but what you are talking about. Yeah. So what you are talking about is also rough notes, which you have, I think, the pink there.
Right.
And this, we don't have to go too much into it because it's really kind of free and the most free form part of our OneNote in that every team member would get a whole section, one of these tabs, with their name on it, where they're allowed to do anything they want because they need a place to do all their rough notes. And we want to keep everyone working in OneNote so that they don't go off and use other programs. So they get a whole section, or they could create a stacked section, which is an entire OneNote to itself.
Exactly.
Where they can keep track of everything they're doing. It can be as rough as they want. They have full ownership over it, and they can even make it secure so that other team members aren't allowed to see it if they so choose.
Yep.
And that allows everything in the project. So what we've looked at now is that every facet of the project, up until exporting it into a PDF, is done within OneNote.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
Exactly.
So I think that's enough for now.
Okay, you're probably right. All right. Thank you, Nick.
So thank you. And if there are more videos on our tools, please let us know in the comment section if we do post this video. And just tell us what you'd like us to cover, and we'll do our best to get that done.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.